Hey, Coach. How's it going?
It is going great. Hello, Uncle Rico.
How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing great.
Thanks for having us.
I'll start it off. Just really excited about this freshman class. We had to get to know the class of 23, kind of on the run. We had kept, the commitments from the previous staff. Thought that was the right thing to do, and really happy that we did. And we're going to wind up with some really good players out of that class. But this was the class that we really got to dive in and build relationships with. And, I've said before today, I think the way that college football is trending, you kind of build your culture and your foundation with your freshmen, much like in the NFL you do with the draft, and then much like the NFL and free agency, you go out and get a transfer or two here or there that can fill some holes on your roster. So it was imperative for us to really dive in to the makeup and DNA of this freshman class. And I am really, really impressed with the families, the way these young men were raised, the competitiveness of them, and they're really good players too. They're highly ranked, had a lot of really good options as to where to continue their collegiate or play their collegiate football and get their degree, and they chose us, and we're really, really excited about it.
Coach, as you said, this class you had to build it from the ground up. With the exception of the 23 class. Every class has its own special traits that make every player within the class stand out from one another. What are some traits from this particular class that you are very excited to have on this team?
Toughness would be one. I think a lot of these guys, football is really, really important to most, if not all, of these guys. That was really apparent in the year of getting to know them. It's almost when you can't get a hold of them because they're too busy training or lifting weights or watching film. That's always a good thing. And that was the case with a lot of our guys. And I think so. The toughness, the physical toughness, but just the ability to prepare and the importance of football in these guys' lives has been something that stood out to me.
Hey, Coach. JD Del Castillo with FAU University Press. I was going through FAU football's Instagram, just looking at all the commitment posts, and most of the players mentioned the coaching staff in their posts and why they chose FAU. So I was wondering if you could tell us, what does it say about the culture that you and your staff are building, where, recruits not only want to play for FAU, but they want to play for Tom Herman and his staff?
Well, I think, I'm really proud of our coaches. They were given a very clear directive in terms of what we were looking for in this class as far as the makeup and DNA was concerned. And they took that charge and ran with it and did a phenomenal job. And I think, that speaks to relationships too, and having that year of relationships when kids credit the coach and the coaching staffs, that means that they believe in us and they believe in the coach, whether it be their position coach, coordinator, whatever it is, head coach, that they believe in us, we believe in them. And so, at some point, unfortunately, we're trending the way where relationships probably aren't going to matter a whole lot. It's going to be what's the number. But right now we still have pockets to where relationships matter, and our staff is really good at developing those genuine relationships.
Right. So you mentioned, I assume, the conversation of transfer portal and how that's kind of taken over college football, with the big emphasis on that. How important is it to kind of have a balance of signing recruits out of high school while still looking to get better in the portal?
Well, you have to have guys out of high school. You've got to be able to develop. We don't have a big enough budget, nor do we have a big enough roster to get the quality and or quantity of transfers that you would need to win the American Conference, a very competitive conference. And so you've got to build it from the ground up and hope that you have the resources that when, some of the bigger fish come preying on the guys that you have brought up through your program, that you have the ability to retain them. But I know this. You want to go look at prior to this year, I don't know the starting quarterback for SMU. I know it was their backup, but they got to the game with a high school signee in Preston Stone. Michael Pratt was a high school signee. Frank Harris, a high school signee. Desmond Ritter, a high school signee. Mm-hmm. Greg Ward Jr., a high school signee. You can go all the way back to the University of Houston. So you've got to fill holes where holes need to be filled for sure. But man, you better have the ability to go recruit, develop, and retain now your really good high school classes.
Coach, with all these amazing additions to the team and the class, are there still some positions that you're looking to keep filling in, like in terms of in both depth and strength when it comes to particular positions?
Yeah, defensive back. Well, probably not with freshmen at this point, and maybe one or two that maybe slipped through the cracks or whatever that in February. Everybody wants to call today the early signing day. Today is signing day. February is the late signing day. 98% of the Division I signees are going to sign today. So transfer wise, I think we still need some depth and help in the secondary on defense, and then still looking probably for a tailback to come in and help Zuberi and our two young tailbacks.
And
Coach.
Go ahead.
Okay. Coach, Uncle Rico, Bleacher Brothers, thanks for having us. You kind of touched on the transfer portal a little bit ago and how it's more difficult with money, competitiveness. We kind of live in this wild west of the transfer portal. So how do you see non-Power 5 teams being able to compete? And do you think that there should be some sort of regulations or guardrails to prevent, the big fat cats from basically poaching every good recruit?
Yeah, I don't, there's not a model currently where you can build a roster with championship level talent without them receiving some kind of financial compensation through their name, image, and likeness. It doesn't exist. Because if you're going to say we're going to build our roster through the transfer portal, okay, well, guess what? Those guys want in the transfer portal to get the quality that you need to win the American. And so you say, okay, well, now we'll go sign nothing but high school kids and build them and do all that. And then you're going to have to pay them to keep them, right? Or somebody, some entity is going to have to be competitive in the NIL space, with other places. So, we are where we are. I'm a huge proponent of name, image, and likeness. I think every human walking the planet deserves to be able to monetize their own name, image, and likeness when it is on the up and up, if you will. And so, but this is the model that we have created, and my fear is not the Power 5 schools with tens of millions of dollars of salary budget, if you will, with their NIL packages. My fear is we better be competitive in our own conference, because if we're expected to beat teams on the field every Saturday, we need to be able to be competitive with them in the areas that are now important to young men, that when deciding on where they're going to go to school and where they're going to play their college football. And right now, money is a gigantic driver of that. And so I just want to make sure that that we and the entities that represent us are as competitive as anybody in our conference.
Yeah, and I think that one of the benefits of going to a coach like you is you're a proven mind. Like, you've had success in the Big Ten, the Big 12. People know Coach Tom Herman. He can put up the numbers. And there's no guarantee that these big cash signings are going to amount to anything, because you have teams like Utah. You have the Bill Snyders of the world in K-State that never had top recruiting classes, but always were able to build a culture. And you were kind of talking about culture a little bit ago. And I wonder, from last year to this year, was it hard to kind of get your guys in there? How many guys on the team from last year were able to fit into your system as opposed to the old regimes?
Yeah, I don't have a specific number, but I know it was difficult. Like I said, when you take over a program like we did at Houston and with 8 wins the year prior to us getting there, they were only a couple steps away. And obviously year one was a massive success. When we got to Texas, we took over 3 straight years of losing seasons, and year one was squeaked by with 6 wins, but we eventually got the roster right and got it turned to where year 2 we won 10 games, beat Oklahoma, beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. And so I think every team kind of dependent on their where they are in their evolution when you take them over kind of gets it at its own pace. And I feel like I did going into the January after that year one at Texas, to be honest with you. We've got a nice, good core group of guys that are bought in, that are talented enough to win with. And I think we're supplementing that core group of guys, with some pieces that may be more like-minded than the pieces that have left.
Coach, 2-part question for me. First part, with these signees earlier today, which positions have improved the most to you, like appearance-wise? And the second part being, how much credit do you give to coordinators Fry and Ballantoni for seeing which positions needed to be retooled and strengthened?
Yeah, I think that's a constant, collaborative effort, if you will, with myself. Jeff Love, our director of player personnel, is kind of in charge of all of the numbers and kind of day-to-day operations of roster management, as well as recruiting in general, and the coordinators. So yeah, roster management, something you don't, when you're an offensive coordinator at Ohio State, there's no workshops or classes on roster management. You just kind of get thrown into it when you're a head coach and kind of figure it out as you go. And so that's kind of in a nutshell how we do it. Yes, the coordinators and position coaches are very involved, but at the end of the day, the different numbers, needs, and then even down to who we want to offer, that's always going to flow through me eventually.
Coach, so just taking a look at the signee class, is it a coincidence that 14 of them were from Florida, or was it kind of an emphasis?
I didn't even realize that, to be honest with you. That's the first time. Who's our out-of-state guy?
Keon Rhodes, Germany.
Oh, yeah, from Germany. So if they're from the United States, they're from the state of Florida. So there you go.
But so was it kind of an emphasis to bring in that homegrown talent, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And there always will be. That's not a one-time thing. I think there are so many talented high school football players that are really well coached, within 100 miles of our campus. And that is a real plus for this program. And again, for the ability then to build, cause we're not going to just be able to go buy all these transfers, so we've got to build from the ground up, and, having that kind of recruiting base within 100 miles of your campus is huge.
Coach, there's still a lot of adding to go within this class, which is quite big as it is at the moment, but still a lot of players that can still be a part of this class. Are there any players that you're anticipating could have you on their radar and in the near future?
I think so. I think we'll have kind of a second wave, if you will, in the transfer cycle with, I think, honestly, some of these guys, I know firsthand, some of these transfers have even told me, well, Coach, the window is open from whatever it was, December 14th to this day. Well, I know, but it's a dead period on Sunday night at midnight. We can't visit you. We can't do anything again until January 3rd. And so some of these guys didn't even know that. And so I think you'll see another wave of transfers when January 3rd opens back up. We can host those guys. I believe that's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I don't know that you'll see us sign any more high school guys in February. But you might see a few more transfers in January, and then again another round in May.
Coach, go ahead.
Thank you. Coach, I know quarterback position, specifically with your offensive scheme, is very important. Obviously, quarterbacks in any scheme is. But do you have the guy right now on campus, or is that something that you're going to be looking at in the transfer portal around January?
We're actively looking for one in the transfer portal, but those two things aren't mutually exclusive, right? I think we certainly can have that guy on campus right now, but I also think that in the best interest and health of our roster that we go get a guy with some experience to compete.
Absolutely. And competition's the key, and you've kind of shown that with your willingness to play young players as well.
Yeah, we played 4 quarterbacks this year.
Yeah.
Not by choice.
Injuries did happen, and that's kind of why I asked, because I know you brought over Casey Thompson from Texas, and I know that there was a pass there as well. So I just didn't know if you had your guy already picked out. But another question is, with some of these young players, because of how the transfer portal is and the willingness of players, specifically at the smaller schools or the non-Power 5 schools, to jump to bigger programs, are they demanding playing time a lot sooner?
I don't know that demand is the right word. I think they're expecting playing time sooner for sure. I think gone are the days of, or at least they're the guys that were coaching that subscribe to the theory of development and waiting and being patient and learning and growing and all of those things. Those are hard to find, really, really hard to find. And, I think nowadays guys understand it's very difficult to play as a freshman, but if by year 2 they're not, helping you, on game day, you're going to have a hard time to keep them for year 3.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, Coach, just a last question by me. So, Charquez Lee, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right.
You are. Yep.
Okay, good. In his commitment post, he said that this recruitment class is going to take over. You kind of partially answered the question in the last one, and I know we aren't even in spring yet. But, are there any players in this class that you expect to have an immediate impact, if not in this next season, then the following?
I think it would be too long of a list for me to, and I'd probably forget a couple. Charquez is certainly one of those guys. I think anytime, I think in this portal era age, it is harder and harder for true freshmen to play. If you think about it, we traveled 3 true freshmen, 2 corners and Zeke Moore. That was it, and so we do need more freshmen to step up and contribute. And at the end of the day, we don't recruit guys to be backups. Really, quarterback and offensive line, if we're having a redshirt a freshman, we probably made a mistake if they're not one of those 2 positions, quarterback or offensive line. Usually the kind of athlete that we should be signing at FAU can help you in some form or fashion their first year.
Speaking of the spring, Coach, are there some players in this current class that are expected to be around for spring football, like coming around in January?
Almost half. Yeah, I think we counted 7 of the 15, which is obviously becoming increasingly more popular. And as a head coach, I think it's a very personal decision, but there's no denying the advancement of these young men from a football standpoint, to go through a college winter off season, to go through a spring practice. By the time you see those guys that come in January as freshmen, by the time you see them in training camp, they look like sophomores. And there is a noticeable difference between them and the freshmen that get here in May. So we're excited about that. Not that the ones that get here in May won't be able to help us, but it definitely does give the early enrollees a leg up in their preparation. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Brad.